All right, let's dive straight into this explainer. Have you ever looked around your city and wondered, why is it built exactly like this? We usually think of our cities as these constantly changing, living things. But actually, they're the most durable human artifacts we make, period. Once we lay down a street grid or bury a sewer system, that physical investment is locked in. It outlasts any individual by centuries. It's like a giant time machine. And today, we're going to unpack exactly how that machine was built and where it's taking us. Here's the roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the city as a durable artifact, then move into the engineered geography of segregation, hit the gentrification and displacement paradox, look at smart growth and walkability, and finally wrap up with how our cities must adapt to climate change. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the most durable artifact, how the past builds the present. To really wrap our heads around our urban environments, we've got to realize something pretty wild. Policies drawn up nearly a century ago, they are still the permanent blueprint for our lives today. They literally dictate where we live, how long our commute is, and who holds wealth right now. Think about suburban sprawl. All the carbon emissions baked into those automobile-dependent neighborhoods we built generations ago will keep shaping sea level trajectories way after the last of those houses is torn down. The past isn't just history, it's literally paved into the present. Moving right along to Section 2, the Geography of Segregation, engineered spatial precision. So the residential segregation we see in American cities today, that wasn't some spontaneous accident of the free market. No way. It was highly engineered. Back in the 1930s, the federal government actually rated neighborhoods based on mortgage risk. They color-coded them. Green meant best, and red meant hazardous. This is the practice known as redlining. And the thing is that red designation was applied almost universally to neighborhoods with Black residents, totally ignoring the actual financial stability of the families living there. Since federal mortgage insurance was blocked in these redlined areas, Black families were systematically shut out of the low-interest post-war mortgage boom. And that was the exact same boom that built the white middle class and created generations of home equity. Now, let's break down another really insidious real estate tactic, blockbusting. Back in the 50s and 60s, real estate agents would intentionally scare white homeowners in changing neighborhoods. They'd warn them that Black families were moving in, pushing them to sell their homes fast and way below market value. Then, and this is the real kicker, those same agents would turn right around and resell those exact houses to Black families at massively inflated prices. But they sold them on these exploitative contract deals. The buyers literally built zero legal equity until the entire contract was paid off. It was a vicious, calculated cycle. It stripped wealth from white sellers, denied equity to Black buyers, and just lined the pockets of the brokers. There's a famous quote from James Baldwin in 1963. Urban renewal means Negro removal. And honestly, that perfectly hits the nail on the head for the policies of that era. Through the Housing Act of 1949 and throughout the 50s, federal urban renewal programs gave cities the power to demolish what they called blighted neighborhoods. But in the real world, that overwhelmingly meant bulldozing low-income Black and immigrant communities. Their homes, their businesses, just wiped off the map to make room for highways, sports stadiums, and luxury housing. All of this built up to a massive demographic earthquake. Between blockbusting and shiny new federal highways making suburban commutes totally doable, we saw white flight take off. White middle-class households migrated to the suburbs in mass. And because federal policies heavily subsidized all this new suburban growth while completely starving older urban areas, the central city tax base just cratered. It was absolutely decimated. This caused urban public services, like schools, to deteriorate incredibly fast, permanently deepening the racial and class divides across metropolitan America. Which brings us to Section 3, Gentrification and Displacement, the modern urban paradox. Fast forward to today, and wow, the pendulum has swung back hard. Starting in the 1990s, higher-income households started moving back into these exact same disinvested urban neighborhoods. And the tension here is real. Proponents say, hey, this reinvestment brings capital, fixes up the schools, and revitalizes the infrastructure. But critics are quick to point out the very real human cost. Critical geographers talk about something called a rent gap. Basically, that's the difference between the low rent a disinvested neighborhood has now and the potential rent it could get in the future. When developers swoop in to exploit that gap for profit, property values skyrocket. And the tragic result? The long-term, usually lower-income residents who stuck it out through decades of neglect are the ones getting priced out and displaced. Okay, Section 4, Smart Growth and Walkability, Redesigning the Sprawl. So, with all the crazy traffic, rising carbon emissions, and the massive costs of sprawl piling up, urban planners finally started pushing back. Jeff Speck, a brilliant urban planner, boiled it down to 4 simple conditions for a walkable city. For a city to actually be pedestrian-friendly, walking has to be useful, safe, comfortable, and interesting. It sounds basic, right? But this directly challenges standard American zoning laws, which usually separate homes from shops. I mean, we've structured our towns so you literally have to hop in a 4,000-pound car just to grab a gallon of milk. But looking at a global timeline, we can see it doesn't have to be this way. Back in the 70s, Curitiba, Brazil built an incredibly efficient bus rapid transit system that works just like a subway, but costs a fraction of the price. Then, in 1979, Portland, Oregon drew a literal line in the sand, an urban growth boundary to legally stop endless sprawl into farmland. Fast forward through the smart growth movement of the 90s to Jeff Speck's walkable city framework today, and it proves one thing for sure. Cities absolutely can reclaim public space from private automobiles. And that leads us to our final part, Section 5, Adapting to Climate Change, Designing for the Future. We really have to face the music here. The geography of climate risk is urban geography. Our coastal megacities are the most vulnerable places on Earth to rising seas and extreme weather. But there is a fascinating philosophical shift happening, especially in Rotterdam. Now, the Netherlands sits mostly below sea level, so their old doctrine was always fight the water, build massive dikes, build huge pumps. But recently, they've pivoted to a new doctrine, make room for the water. Instead of just building taller walls, they're intentionally designing public infrastructure to pull double duty and actually invite the water in. Just look at this genius innovation, the waterplane. On a normal, sunny day, it's just a concrete public plaza where kids skateboard and people hang out. But when a heavy rainstorm hits, it seamlessly transforms into a temporary reservoir that can hold 1.7 million liters of stormwater. Once the peak storm passes, it gradually drains away into the system. It's a masterclass in taking a necessary flood control expense and turning it into a gorgeous community amenity. Cities all over the world are studying this right now. And we're seeing these amazing, localized adaptations pop up everywhere. After Hurricane Sandy, New York City proposed the Big U, a massive seawall and park system wrapping around Lower Manhattan. Over in Singapore, they're fighting the urban heat island effect by covering massive buildings in vertical greenery. And in Phoenix, where summer temps regularly blast past 110 degrees, they're rolling out mandatory shade structures and cool pavements. These are highly reflective surfaces that actively absorb less of the sun's heat. It's literally survival by design. But to really grasp the big picture, we have to see how interconnected it all is. Let's look at the geographic chain reaction happening right now in Bangladesh. First, global carbon emissions cause sea levels to rise. This pushes saltwater straight into Bangladesh's freshwater farming lands. To survive, landowners convert their ruined rice fields into profitable saltwater shrimp farms. But what about the poor farm laborers who don't own the land? They can't farm anymore. They're displaced. So they migrate by the millions to coastal megacities like Dhaka. It's a direct domino effect. A global atmospheric shift forces a local farmer off their land, triggering a massive wave of regional urban migration. Which brings us to our final question. We started this explainer by establishing that the city is our most durable human artifact. Remember those 1930s redlining maps and the 1950s highways? Those decisions are still dictating the lives of millions of people today. So as we stare down a future of massive climate adaptation and urban shifts, we've got to ask ourselves, what kind of artifact are we building right now? Because the blueprints we are drawing up today will absolutely outlast us all. So, what legacy will your city's current blueprint leave for the year 2100?